Welcome, fright enthusiasts, to Carrion Creature Feature, your go-to destination for spine-chilling tales that will send shivers down your spine. On today's bone-chilling episode, we're delving into the sinister side of Facebook Marketplace. From deceptive landlords to hidden horrors, our stories will make you rethink every click. Make sure to subscribe, hit that bell, and follow for a front row seat to the nightmares that await. Brace yourself for a journey into the shadows, if you dare.
The night was dark, and the remote hum of nature enveloped my house on the shores of Lake Norman. I had decided to sell my motorcycle, a sleek Ducati that had carried me through the winding roads of North Carolina. The decision to part with it was a practical one. My husband, a merchant marine, was often away, and the bike was just gathering dust in the garage. So I posted an ad on Facebook Marketplace, and soon enough, a man named Richard responded. His profile seemed innocent enough. A loving father with pictures of smiling kids and family outings. He even had photos with friends at backyard barbecues. We exchanged messages, and he seemed genuinely interested in the motorcycle. He explained that he worked late but could come by in the evening to make the purchase. The evening arrived, and the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the tranquil lake. I waited anxiously, feeling a mixture of anticipation and nervous energy. Richard had texted letting me know he'd be a bit late due to work. In this remote part of Lake Norman, neighbors were sparse, and my husband was miles away at sea. I tried reaching out to nearby friends, but no one was available on short notice to join me. This meant I would be alone for the sell, but I didn't let this deter me. As darkness settled in, a truck with a trailer pulled up to my driveway. The headlights illuminated a figure, and Richard stepped out. He looked just like the man in the photos, middle-aged with a slight paunch and receding hairline. He wore a work uniform which matched the late-night job he'd mentioned. This made me relax a little, and I proceeded outside to greet him. I led him to the garage, where the motorcycle gleamed under the dim light. Richard inspected it, nodding appreciatively. He told me about how his kids loved to go riding on motorcycles, and he couldn't wait to see their faces when he brought the bike home. But then, as if struck by a sudden realization, he said he couldn't see clearly in the garage lights and requested to see the title paperwork inside the house. Reluctantly, I agreed, thinking nothing of it. As we entered, the atmosphere shifted. The air grew heavy, and Richard's demeanor changed. He became jittery, his movements erratic. When I asked him if things were all right, he seemed to just stare at me with cold eyes. For a moment, there was uneasy silence between us, and concern crept into my thoughts. But before I could react, he blocked my path to the front entrance. Panic set in as I realized I was alone with a stranger in the dead of night. I tried to keep my composure, explaining that the paperwork was in my bedroom. But as we entered, his behavior escalated. He locked the door behind us, and his friendly facade shattered like glass. The room seemed to close in around me as Richard ranted, his words a jumble of incoherent anger. I could see his face turning red as he started to work himself into a frenzy. Fear gnawed at my insides, urging me to escape. With a burst of adrenaline, I sprinted to my bedroom, slamming the door shut behind me. I fumbled for the bedside drawer, grasping the cold steel of my 9mm. Richard jerked the bedroom door open, screaming threats through clenched teeth. I brandished the firearm, my hands trembling as I flipped the safety off. The sight of the gun seemed to sober him momentarily, and he backed away from the bedroom and towards the front door. With a final, chilling look of hatred, he retreated from my house, disappearing into the night. The echoes of his actions lingered in the air as I locked every entrance, my heart pounding in my chest. I called the police, providing a description of the man who had just invaded my home. They assured me they would patrol the area, but the terror had already seeped into the walls of my once secure sanctuary. The motorcycle remained in the garage, forgotten in the wake of a night that shattered the illusion of safety. In the quiet hours that followed, I sat alone in the darkness, haunted by the realization that evil could wear a familiar face. even one adorned with the guise of a loving father.
The hunt for a PlayStation 5 had consumed my every waking thought. The elusive console, coveted by gamers far and wide, seemed almost mythical in its scarcity. Desperation had driven me to scour Facebook Marketplace in search of a seller willing to part with the prized possession. That's when I stumbled upon a profile that promised exactly what I desired. Her name was Emily, or at least that's what her profile claimed. A young woman with an apparent passion for gaming. Her pictures showcased a room adorned with posters of classic titles and shelves filled with various gaming peripherals. Intrigued and cautiously optimistic, I messaged her about the PlayStation 5 she had listed. To my surprise, Emily responded promptly, eager to answer any questions I had. She sent pictures of the console, its pristine condition evident in the well-lit snapshots. My skepticism began to wane as she detailed its specifications and even provided additional images upon my request. However, as the conversation progressed, a sense of unease settled in my gut. Emily insisted on a cash transaction, citing safety concerns. She proposed a meeting in the parking lot of a bustling shopping mall, a public space for our mutual protection. Although hesitant, I agreed, driven by my burning desire to finally secure the elusive gaming system. The day of the meeting arrived, and I made my way to the designated location. But as I entered the seemingly deserted parking lot, a chill ran down my spine. The shopping mall, once teeming with life, now stood as a dilapidated shell, a ghost of its former self. My unease intensified when I noticed a gray car lurking in the shadows. It approached with an unsettling speed, and I couldn't discern the faces behind the tinted windows. The feeling of dread clung to me as the car pulled up alongside my driver's window, and the passenger window slowly rolled down. Inside sat a woman with wild, meth-ravaged eyes and visible scratch marks on her face. The driver was a black man with glazed red eyes that looked straight ahead, oblivious to our interaction. "Are you Nick? Did you want to see the PlayStation?" the lady in the car whispered. My instincts screamed at me to flee, but before I could react, she exited the gray car and walked to the back. "It's in the trunk if you want to see it, hun," she said, motioning me to follow her. Feeling a mounting pressure, I reluctantly agreed, stepping out of my car with the dubious lady. As the trunk creaked open, a pale, gaunt figure lurched forward, brandishing a straight razor. Panic surged through me as the blade sliced through the air, cutting my hand. I stumbled backward, adrenaline pumping. The woman lunged to subdue me, but survival instincts kicked in. With a burst of energy, I sprinted across the empty parking lot, the gray car hot on my heels. The chase was a nightmare, a surreal race through the decaying remnants of commerce. Desperation led me to a vacant shop, and luckily, the door was unlocked, allowing me to slip inside. I found a piece of rebar on the floor and quickly wedged it in between the door handles. Breathing heavily, I retreated deeper into the store, hiding from the lights of the gray car as it grew closer. Wiping the blood from my cut hand, I frantically dialed the police on my cell phone, a sense of relief washing over me as the 911 operator picked up. But this was soon interrupted by a loud sound emanating from the shop front. I peered through some empty shelves to see the pale man and woman trying to open the front entrance. A knot formed in the pit of my stomach as the gray car pulled up behind them, illuminating the windows of the vacant shop. I shielded my eyes from the blaring lights and retreated further into the store. Suddenly, my attention was grabbed as I could hear sirens wailing. The pale man and lady immediately stopped and ran back to the gray car, fleeing from the scene. Fortunately for me, a security guard had been patrolling the area and scared the would-be robbers away. As the police arrived, I emerged from my hiding spot, the nightmare finally coming to an end. After a tetanus shot and 5 stitches, I was able to go home and finally process the entire experience. The horror of that desolate parking lot would forever haunt my dreams, a cautionary tale of the dangers lurking behind the enticing glow of a coveted gaming console.
Hello, my name's Kelly and I'm in my early 20s. I've spent most of my college years sharing apartments with roommates. I used to joke that I was never alone because someone was either sleeping across from me on a couch or crashing on the floor after an all-nighter. As you might guess, this gets old very quickly, and personal privacy becomes something of fabled myths. The thrill of independence had swirled in my chest when I stumbled upon an enticing ad for a cheap one-bedroom, one-bathroom garage apartment on Facebook Marketplace. Desperation for a place to call my own blinded me to the potential dangers that lurked beneath the surface. Scott, the middle-aged landlord, greeted me with a warm smile as I stepped into the apartment for the first time. The location was ideal. A short walk to downtown, and the updates to the space were impressive with new appliances. I couldn't believe the asking rent was so low. My current apartment was nearly 3 times the amount. Scott, however, wasted no time in revealing his hidden agenda. "I got several showings today," he explained, his eyes scanning the surroundings as if guarding a precious secret. "If you really want this place, you'll have to give me a security deposit and sign the lease before the others arrive. Time is of the essence, you know." I hesitated for a moment before once more confirming the asking price. Scott nodded in agreement, saying, "I'd rather rent at a lower rate to someone like you, who will take care of the place and stay longer." Fueled by the fear of losing out on this golden opportunity, I handed over the cash and signed the lease, sealing my fate with a signature. 2 days later, the keys to the apartment were in my hands, and the echoes of my footsteps reverberated through the empty rooms. Little did I know, my celebration would soon morph into a living nightmare. One afternoon, as I dusted the high corners of the living room, my fingers grazed something cold and metallic. Looking up, my eyes widened in horror as I discovered a small camera hidden in the ceiling. A sense of violation washed over me, and paranoia clung to my every thought. A thorough search uncovered 2 more cameras, one in my bedroom, discreetly nestled among my personal belongings, and another in the bathroom, violating the last shreds of my privacy. Panic set in as the realization dawned on me that I had unwittingly become the star of a twisted show. With trembling hands, I reported the invasion to the police. Their investigation unveiled a horrifying truth. Scott had been running a clandestine webcam service for paying customers, broadcasting my most intimate moments. A notebook retrieved by the investigating detectives revealed a well-orchestrated operation that extended to other rental properties he owned. In each instance, the victim was a young single female, lured in with the promise of cheap rent. The violation haunted me long after the cameras were removed and the legal proceedings began. To this day, footage of me still exists on the net, and I'm powerless to do anything about it. The scars of betrayal and invasion lingered, a chilling reminder that sometimes a good deal is simply too good to be true. As we bid farewell to the shadows that lurk within the depths of Facebook Marketplace, we hope you enjoyed this spine-chilling episode on Carrion Creature Feature. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that bell, and follow us for more tales that will keep you up at night. Your support keeps the nightmares alive, so stay tuned for the next installment of horror that awaits. Until then, sleep tight, if you can.